the line of the work of Dasok is actually radical feminism. That it's first important politically for the whole space of ex-Yugoslavia, and concretely here will be the question, this radical feminism, how it actually helps us politically to envision the period of the 90s until today, what's going on in Banja Luka, or better, Republika Srpska.
Well, first of all, for me it's very hard to isolate Republika Srpska from Bosnian context. Although it's a little bit, there are some specific moments, but I wouldn't say it's, there are a lot of differences. And why, I mean, when you say radical, I'm a little bit, you know, suspicious. What does it mean, and how radical we are? I wouldn't say that we are radical in a sense that we support violence or something like that. But I would say that on the level of ideas, we are pretty radical. And why I think it's important? It's important because we can't, you know, for the war, men are responsible. And we must isolate that women part from it, and to give critique from that side. Because we can't both be equally responsible for what happened. And especially after the war, of course, we did not get same awards, I would say. So that's why it's very important to underline that there are at least two positions, male and female, and that we just take a lot of burden, but at the end we didn't get anything, more or less.
Now, you open also one question just before going to some other points, female and male, but today it's also a lot of talks, at least in ex-Yugoslavia, of the LGBT community. So is this also part of this re-questioning of what's happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, yes, but you know, my generation, I was born in 1982, so I can't really relate to the situation before the war, what was the position of LGBT, but now I think it's very important struggle. And we are radical here because we don't want to see the difference, you know. We want everything equal, no matter if you are LGBT or not, because it's part of your identity, and it's not mine to interfere that. But if I can help you to improve your position, that's my obligation.
Late Žarma Papić, one of the most important feminists and also radical and political, she termed in analysis of the 90s in Serbia that what was going on, this unbelievable, horrifying nationalism was actually a form of turbo fascism. And my question will be, if this way of defining the whole social body as turbo fascist body, that means that has all these elements with very much exposed patriarchy, militarization and so on, can be used also as a tool, as a concept in rethinking what was the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina in relation to Serbs as one of these entities in this space.
Well, if we consider situation in Serbia, I think the most radical anti-war, I would say even a voice of sense comes from the Women in Black, and that is the organization that has certain values, and I think they provoke just with the fact that they are women, and they are saying you didn't do it because we tell you.
I agree. Of the Women in Black, that really, they were one of the major force against the war. I mean, without them. But if this had influence, if it was a resonance also in this space.
It has influence. It has influence because everyone has opinion about them. Some of us supporting what they do, some of people hate them, but no one is ambivalent. And I think that's a message for that you just can't ignore them. You love them or you hate them. And I think that's very important. And when we speak about that differences between Republika Srpska and Federation, I think that people in Republika Srpska still didn't face, what's the name for it? Catharsis. And here is really, really postponed catharsis, and it's done by mostly with the media, because still they are trying to tell that war didn't happen. Or it happened a little bit, but you know, we both are guilty. You know, in Sarajevo, people throw grenades on themselves by themselves. You know, that stupid stories, and it's still actual here. And I think that women in black are actually very important to provoke people to think outside of that space that is totally controlled with the media. And unfortunately, the political elites are aware of their power, and they are abusing that so much. So it's very important to have someone to provoke people to maybe by themselves to come to some conclusions, or at least to ask right questions.
Yeah, and tell us, do LGBT struggles have a role in antagonizing historical revisionism?
Well, I would say it's again complex story, but what's important, it's important that there is that line of human rights. And if we speak about LGBT and that LGBT has to have certain rights that they don't have at this moment, then it's totally natural to connect it with the victims, because they also need human rights and some more rights than people who did crimes. So I would say that there is that kind of understanding, but I think that there are some really negative elements inside of LGBT movement, especially people who promote capitalistic, consumeristic way of life. And then it's harder to cooperate with them, because for them war is just, you know, something that happened, or they maybe don't even think about it. They are not even aware what does it mean.
Yeah, I guess you're talking about some sort of liberal LGBT discourses.
Yeah, let's say. I would say that are people who are, you know, successful, and they don't even see what's going on the margins or on the bottom of the society. So
you could really think or share with us what are the positions inside feminism that actually allows us to really disentangle this historical revisionism, this poisoning nationalism that is also part of the whole ex-Yugoslavia space, but specifically in Bosnia and Herzegovina and Serbia.
Mm-hmm. But again, we have a different kind of feminisms. We have those who support politicians. I mean, I was also myself like that. I was thinking that it's very important to have women inside of political parties and women in the parliaments and so on and so on. But at some point, I actually saw that just because they are women, that's not guaranteed that they won't betray me, you know. So now I'm thinking a little bit differently. But I think that group is still active, and they are still trying to support them. But I will support them, of course. But I have demands now. You know, you can't. I can't vote for you, and tomorrow you will forbid abortion, for instance. You know, you must give me the guarantee, and I will vote for you. And because you are women, it's a plus. But I'm not obligated to vote for you just because you are a woman.
Yeah, to my mind it came Biljana Plavšić. That was such a monstrous figure.
Okay, I mean, but again, we can also consider that, because we love to talk about women, especially when they did war crimes. And but there are so many men who did even worse things, and we are like, you know, Azra Hadžić, and that women that are really, you know, it's unusual for women to kill someone or to, I don't know, be a monstrous. So I wouldn't even consider that part. I would consider this modern politicians.
The feminism that is central is connected historically with anti-fascism, I suppose, or its other historical ties because feminism it's important and has a lot of lines. Political lines, activations from the 70s on, but in an ex-Yugoslav space, what will be the historical ties? What will be these pillars onto which you actually build?
Well, I'm very proud to AFG, and I think that's a really big thing that happened here. And when I think about feminism, that's my first relation to that, although we had some important women before, but I think that was a really nice attempt of organizing women, and I think the goals they achieved are really, really high. We can, from this perspective, of course, analyze their work and said, oh, they didn't do this good, but for the time when they lived and do things, I think it was really, really huge. And I also think that during the war, feminism was really important. And that was one of the rare of voices of sense, health sense, because there are some stories. I mean, I was too young, but I know some stories where women from Bosnia and from Serbia were contacting, and Žarana Papić is from Sarajevo, and she was really critical. And there are other women, and I think without feminism, the situation even today would be totally different and much harder. So I think that feminists play a big role, and. But for men needed more time, you know, to start dialogue, no matter how successful or unsuccessful that was. But what I also find some differences between in our communication with the Croatian feminists, and somehow it's harder. You know, there are some really nice women that I really respect and I like, and I don't know, we are friends in a Facebook. When I'm in Croatia, we see each other, or when they come here, but somehow there is no, you know, like they are totally not open to talk about some things that happened during the 90s, as for instance some women from Serbia are.
Mm-hmm. What kind of things?
Kind of war things. You know, I'm not sure, maybe I didn't meet right women, but most of them are pretty reserved when they talk about that. You know, it's like position that Croatia was not involved in the war here. Mm-hmm. And in Serbia, at least feminists are pretty aware of it.
Yes, we have quite some talks that we did in Belgrade, and it's a big emphasis and also a big point of view connected with this. But what do you think? What is the reason? Because of Croatia, in this case, being connected with a political statement as it's feminism, to withdraw from or to put apart from such discussions?
Well, I'm not really sure. But maybe it's because they think some other things are more important, and they kind of have that position of victims, and they want to keep it, you know. Vukovar is important, Srebrenica is important, but I don't know, some other areas where Croatians did crimes, well, you know, that were... So I'm not sure.
How you will think about the relations between the genocide and the point from which you speak, and the implications of this for the politicization of your work and those who are near you?
Well, first of all, for me it's very hard to look at that extreme points. During the war, I lived partly in Ilidža, which was in the first front line. And I really, from direct experience, I know how it was and what it was. And somehow I connected mostly with my experience, so I'm not really, I don't know how to answer that question. I think it's very important, but you know, for me it's a little bit, I have differently, you know, connected dots inside of my head. So I think it's important. I think it's as you said, that is where we can actually see what happened and how big that was. And that's also the proof how vulnerable we are. And so many questions. But I can't really just relate to that.
What do you think about the correlation between, let's say, feminist struggles and the left struggles?
The left struggles? That's a good question. Well, actually, I thought that we are natural partners, but the more I work, the more I can see that is not really the true. And I'm not sure how the situation is where you live and what you are doing, but in here, in most leftist organizations are only men. And for me, it's a sign that something is really wrong. And whenever I try to start a discussion or whoever, they said, "Oh, we hate identity politics, blah, 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 blah." So I'm not bothering with that. I think that leftist ideas are right, but I have the problem with that operative level, you know, where you only don't see the problem, that you don't have any women inside of your groups, and you don't even wonder why is that. So.
And what will be then the relation between feminism and anti-capitalism? So the relation of feminism in analysis of labor and capital and the gender question.
Well, first of all, I would say that we can connect war with the capitalism and with the new system of values. Let's call it that way, and we must have a critique of that. So. Feminism, that's obligation of feminism, and it's because we always have to look for a better society, for social justice, and unfortunately for the poor countries that are stuck in a capitalism, social justice is something that don't exist. So we must always at least ask questions and be loud about that. Not and to try, you know, usually the problem is that we are closed in the groups, and we must find the ways to spread our voices outside. It's not that we are closed because we want to. Sometimes we just don't have a space, you know, to spread our messages. But it's also part of our agenda to go.
What will be the main points of actually discriminating those who are declared feminists or those who actually talk about social justice in this space? How those civil society, other parts in concrete setting of the city is actually reacting?
That's a very hard question.
Yeah. How they dismiss you?
I wouldn't say they dismiss me because I'm very picky, you know. I don't want to spend time with someone who I don't think it's a health person, let's say. And sometimes I will go into discussion and try to tell something and to listen to you, but I'm not always able to do that. So I'm not sure what are the ways, because you know, to have a position of someone who is criticizing the society, your position is already privileged. So it depends comparing with who. If I, as activist, as I don't know, someone who lives here, who can say I don't believe in God, you know, publicly or whatever, I can't really compare my position with someone who does not have such a luxury, let's say, or with the Roma people, or with someone who is really disadvantaged here in this society. So I don't know how to answer that. I mean, this is my answer.
Because a lot of thoughts that we could hear these days, it's actually about an impossibility.
I want to say that I'm a little bit pissed off even with the activists who think that they deserve something that is not really part of average, you know, package. And I don't know. I always question my privileges, although I'm not in a terms of surviving, I still think that I'm really, really privileged, and I always question that. And I don't have a job. Okay, I don't have a job.
Speaking of influences and historical experiences, would you say that feminist discourses in Bosnia and Herzegovina are influenced by similar discourses from the first world? Or are there any influences coming from the third world?
Mm-hmm. Well, I wouldn't say that we are first world feminists, and I don't actually see. I see some attempts, especially in this political sphere of high politics, political parties. Some women that are, I don't know, they probably studied somewhere abroad, and now they came with the ideas, but. I wouldn't say that the natural habitat of their ideas is this area. And I would say that natural feminism from here is feminism that is talking about social justice, that is talking about privileges, that is talking about everyone who don't have equal position. So I would say that is different. And from the third world, I would say, yes, we don't really understand the problems of the third world either, because we are in a much better position. At least we don't, most of us are surviving somehow, you know.
So Marxist feminism?
I didn't say that it's present, but I think that is for our area a good way of thinking, you know. Okay.
If it's elements for this society that we can think that will change, if it's who can be this force and in which way?
We can and we have to be that force. How I see, I recently, last 2-3 years, I was thinking a lot about that, and thank you for asking me that. I see small communities that are sustainable, and that produce their own food, and they have their own water. And they are cooperating with each other in terms of exchanging goods. I don't see that this world, this system will survive. I think it's impossible. It's again a matter of time, but I don't want to spend the rest of my life living like this. So I would really like if we can just you know, ignore. Okay, you have institutions, fine, lucky you, but that are not my institutions.